My name is Chris. I'm going to share a little bit about what it looks like to walk with Christ for me. When I was 19 years old, I left my parents' house in New Jersey and I moved to New York City to pursue a career in the fashion industry as a model. It was 4 years later, on my 23rd birthday. I was standing on the roof of my apartment in Little Italy, New York City, and I was looking up at the stars, thinking about the previous 4 years of my life. And at that time, I was in 2 billboards in Times Square, and I was in almost every magazine from the advertisements that I had done. But I felt nothing inside myself as I stood there that evening. I knew about God, but I didn't know God. There was no relationship. So I looked up at the stars, and I made a wish. I was thinking about everything that I had been blessed with in the flesh. And in hindsight, I was realizing, what good is a man who gains the world and loses his soul? Because the devil will give you everything that you want, but it comes with a price. I moved to California a few weeks later to pursue a career in the film industry as an actor. And it was 2 short years later that I found myself in Vancouver, Canada, shooting a lead role in a $60 million film by 20th Century Fox. It was at that moment that the Father started drawing me into himself and making himself known. And as I was reading all the scripts that were coming in for the film and television industry, and I was starting to read the Bible, I remember sitting down and going, God, how am I going to do this at the same time? Because what I'm reading about in the heart of you, my Creator, is not lining up with what I'm reading about within these films and these television shows that people watch. How can we do this together? So I called on my modeling agencies and I pulled away from acting. And I asked if I could get some jobs because I was trying to sustain myself. And one of the first jobs that they had for me was a job for a magazine called Le Monde Vogue with Stephen Meisel. Le Monde Vogue was by far one of the most prestigious magazines, if not the most, for a male model to be in. And Stephen Meisel, at that time the photographer, was one of the top 2 photographers in the world. What it meant for my career was success to come, tremendous amounts of worldly glory, and so forth and so on. But leading up to that shoot, I felt tremendous anguish within inside of myself, and I didn't know why. It was everything that I wanted. Le Monde Vogue was the only magazine that I ever wanted to be in throughout my career. And I remember the evening before, and I was toiling all night long, waking up all night long in prayer, not knowing why. At one point, I was on my knees on my bed in the middle of prayer, like 5 in the morning. In the morning before I left for my job, I remember saying, Father, I do not know what is going on, but if you have something for me to do on that job today, I pray that you make it easy. Not my will, but yours be done. And as I left the house and I got to the set, everything looked normal, and I sighed a sigh of relief. And I sat down inside the makeup room and I asked the makeup artist what we were going to be doing that day. And that's when he shared with me that they were going to be dressing me in drag, that they were going to dress me like a woman. My heart sank immediately. I felt, literally inside, I felt like I was going to scream and cry and puke at the same time. All I kept hearing was the verse in Deuteronomy 22 where it talks about a man shall not dress in woman's clothing. Long story short, I needed to choose my career and the fame that was before me or the God that had come into my life. So I decided to call my agent, my gay agent of many years, and talk to him about the love of Christ that had come inside of me and to let him know that I needed to leave that shoot. And when I started talking to him, he stopped me midstream and he said, Chris, he said, we're in this together. He said, if you're not comfortable on that shoot, you leave right now. What it looked like moving forward, I struggled tremendously because I still wanted to act. I still wanted to stay in the industry because, to be honest with you, my flesh sought the glory. As the jobs came, I loved in my flesh to feel the praise of men. I fed off of it in my flesh. But as I read 1 Corinthians, the first chapter going into the second one day, it says, who of you can glory in the presence of the Lord? And I imagined myself at the end of my days standing before my Creator. And I thought of all the worldly accomplishments that I had and all the worldly accomplishments I wanted to do and wanted to achieve. And then I imagined being in His presence, and I couldn't believe that I was living in a way as if any of those things would make me look any different in His eyes. But then I imagined myself at the end of my days before our Creator, and I imagined so many more that would have been there with me if I lived a life for His glory. So I left the film industry as an actor, even though I loved the work, because I couldn't get past the man in the mirror. For me to walk with Christ, what it means is that there's no compromise.